Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to Lionel and Joyce Dahmer. Growing up, his family appeared to be fairly typical, with his father working as a chemist and his mother staying at home. However, beneath the surface, there were significant issues that affected Jeffrey's upbringing. His parents had a tumultuous relationship, and their marriage was strained, eventually ending in divorce when Dahmer was 14 years old. This event had a profound impact on Jeffrey, as he often described feeling abandoned and isolated. The divorce deepened his emotional detachment and sense of loneliness. As a child, Dahmer was shy and introverted, struggling to connect with his peers. He began to display behaviors that were odd for his age, such as a growing fascination with animals and death. Around the age of 10, he started collecting roadkill and dissecting animals, which is often considered a precursor to more concerning behaviors. Dahmer would later admit that this fascination with the anatomy of animals sparked an early interest in death. Dahmer's early experiences and the emotional distance from his parents played a significant role in shaping his psychological development. His increasing isolation and curiosity about death set the stage for the later, darker aspects of his personality. As Jeffrey Dahmer entered his teenage years, his behavioral and psychological issues became more pronounced. By the age of 14, his parents' divorce had left him emotionally scarred. He struggled with feelings of abandonment and began to withdraw even further from his peers. His social isolation intensified as he became more introverted, and his behavior began to take a darker turn. Dahmer's high school years were marked by increasing alienation. He had difficulty fitting in, and his classmates considered him strange. He was often the target of bullying and was described as an outsider in school. Although he was not physically imposing, Dahmer's behavior, his lack of social skills, coupled with his growing obsession with death and control, distanced him from others. During this time, Dahmer began to experiment with alcohol. By the time he was 14, he had started drinking heavily, using alcohol to cope with his deep feelings of loneliness, anxiety, and confusion about his sexuality. He had a limited understanding of his desires, particularly an emerging attraction to men, and struggled to process these emotions. Dahmer's early teenage years also marked the beginning of his increasing interest in fantasies of dominance and control. He began imagining ways to assert power over others, and these fantasies would evolve into the disturbing behaviors that characterized his adult life. However, at this point, he had not yet acted on his darker urges. At this stage, Dahmer's life seemed like a series of missed opportunities for intervention. His isolation, compounded by his growing dependence on alcohol and the absence of healthy emotional outlets, created the perfect storm for the development of deeper psychological issues that would soon manifest in violent ways. In 1978, shortly after graduating from high school, Jeffrey Dahmer's behavior took a dark turn with his first crime. At the age of 18, Dahmer lured an individual, Stephen Hicks, into his car, offering a ride. What followed was a pivotal moment in Dahmer's life, marking the beginning of a series of increasingly violent and disturbing acts. The murder set a grim precedent for his future actions. This first incident revealed a disturbing pattern in Dahmer's behavior: his desire for control and dominance over others. His ability to blend into society and carry out his actions without immediate suspicion demonstrated a chilling ability to remain undetected. As his crimes continued, they became more methodical, reflecting Dahmer's psychological need for power, control, and the desire to satisfy deeply rooted and troubling compulsions. Over the years, Dahmer's crimes evolved. What began as a single, spontaneous act grew into a calculated series of violent events. Dahmer's growing need to assert control over his victims became clearer. His actions were no longer random. They were part of a larger, twisted fantasy that involved manipulating and overpowering his targets. Each crime reinforced the psychological patterns of behavior he had developed over time. Dahmer's increasing isolation, combined with his mounting struggles to process his feelings and desires, led to an escalation of his actions. These developments would soon take a more disturbing form, as Dahmer sought to manipulate not just his victims, but the aftermath of his actions as well. His growing sophistication in carrying out his crimes would soon raise questions about his mental state and the reasons behind his disturbing need for control over others. Dahmer's escalating actions became an undeniable part of his psychological makeup, drawing him deeper into a world of darkness that would be hard for anyone to understand. As Jeffrey Dahmer's crimes escalated, his behavior became more methodical and increasingly disturbing. Over time, his need for control over his victims deepened. What began as isolated, impulsive acts of violence developed into a more complex and calculated pattern, driven by Dahmer's internal compulsions and fantasies. Dahmer's crimes were not just about murder, they were about power and control. He began to develop specific methods for luring his victims, often targeting young men. His manipulation became more refined, as he would entice individuals with promises of money or companionship only to drug them, overpower them, and eventually kill them. Dahmer's actions demonstrated a chilling ability to plan his crimes in great detail, ensuring that he could evade detection for years. What truly set Dahmer apart from many other serial killers was his obsession with the physical remains of his victims. He often kept parts of their bodies, preserving them in various ways. This behavior was not just about the physical act of killing, but also about maintaining a form of control over the victims long after their deaths. Dahmer's need to preserve parts of his victims' bodies was tied to his desire to hold on to the power he had over them, even after their lives had ended. Psychologists who studied Dahmer pointed to his obsessive nature. His focus on controlling every aspect of his crime, from the way he chose his victims to how he disposed of their remains, demonstrated the extent of his compulsions. The more he committed, the more his behavior became ritualistic. Dahmer's fixation on creating a specific world of his own, a world where he had complete power, took precedence over almost everything else in his life. By this point, Dahmer had moved beyond merely seeking gratification from his victims. He was trying to construct a reality where he was in control at all times, a reality that was disturbingly rooted in the manipulation and subjugation of other people. After years of evading justice, Jeffrey Dahmer's crimes were finally uncovered in 1991. Despite his ability to remain undetected, a breakthrough came when a potential victim, Tracy Edwards, who managed to escape from Dahmer's apartment. He sought help and led police back to the apartment, where officers discovered compelling evidence that connected Dahmer to a series of disappearances. Upon investigating, law enforcement uncovered photographs and items that clearly indicated the nature of Dahmer's actions. This evidence was pivotal in linking him to multiple cases, and it prompted his immediate arrest. Dahmer, when confronted, admitted to the crimes and provided detailed confessions regarding the murders he had committed. His arrest brought national attention and revealed the scope of his crimes, which had been carried out over many years. The investigation uncovered that Dahmer had been active for a long time, and his ability to blend into society without attracting suspicion raised significant concerns about how such a case could go unnoticed for so long. Law enforcement also questioned how Dahmer was able to maintain a secretive existence for so many years. His ability to evade detection, despite the growing number of missing persons, was an area of focus during the investigation. The fact that Dahmer had been able to operate for as long as he did, without drawing the attention of authorities, highlighted certain vulnerabilities in law enforcement processes. The media frenzy surrounding Dahmer's capture also led to broader discussions about criminal profiling and the challenges in identifying serial killers. His case became one of the most notorious in criminal history, leaving law enforcement agencies to reflect on how to prevent such incidents from happening in the future. After his arrest in 1991, Jeffrey Dahmer was charged with 17 murders, and his trial began in 1992. The case captured widespread attention due to the horrific nature of his crimes, the disturbing details of his confessions, and the question of his mental state. Dahmer's defense argued that he was legally insane, suggesting that he had suffered from a mental illness that impaired his judgment at the time of the killings. They contended that he was not fully aware of the gravity of his actions. However, the prosecution argued that Dahmer knew exactly what he was doing and that he had consciously chosen to commit these crimes. They pointed to his ability to plan and execute the murders, as well as his detailed confessions, as evidence of his awareness and intent. The jury ultimately sided with the prosecution, finding Dahmer guilty of 15 murders, and he was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms in prison without the possibility of parole. The trial and its outcome shocked the nation. Dahmer's calm demeanor throughout the proceedings and his lack of visible remorse struck many as chilling. His ability to describe his actions with such detachment left a lasting impression on the public, making him one of the most notorious serial killers in modern history. While incarcerated, Dahmer was held at the Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin. His time in prison was marked by several incidents, including the media attention surrounding his imprisonment and the reactions of fellow inmates. Dahmer reportedly expressed remorse in later interviews and claimed that he had found religion, which some believed was a form of self-redemption. However, the full extent of his psychological state remained a topic of debate. On November 28, 1994, Jeffrey Dahmer's life came to a violent end. He was killed by an inmate named Christopher Scarver while performing work duties in the prison gym. Scarver, along with another inmate, Jesse Anderson, attacked Dahmer, and Dahmer later succumbed to his injuries. The circumstances surrounding Dahmer's death remain a subject of controversy and speculation, though it is generally understood that the attack was carried out by fellow inmates in response to Dahmer's notoriety. Could Dahmer's crimes have been prevented? It's a complex question with no easy answers. Early intervention, therapy, and a supportive environment might have made a difference. But the depth of his pathology suggests a deeply ingrained darkness. Are some individuals simply born with a predisposition to violence? It's a disturbing thought, but one that must be considered. Dahmer's motives remain shrouded in mystery, a testament to the complexity of the human psyche. Early intervention and mental health support would have been crucial in Dahmer's case. Perhaps with the right help, the monster within could have been contained. But the reality is that we can never know for sure. It's crucial to remember the victims of Jeffrey Dahmer, to delve deeper into their lives, and to understand their hopes and vulnerabilities. They were not just statistics, they were human beings with dreams and aspirations. By focusing on the victims, we can offer a more complete picture of the tragedy. The case of Jeffrey Dahmer raises fundamental questions about the psychology of serial killers. Is it nature or nurture that shapes these individuals? The answer is likely a complex interplay of both. Genetic predispositions may play a role, but environmental factors are also crucial. Childhood trauma, abuse, and neglect can all contribute to the development of violent tendencies. Understanding these factors is essential for prevention. Mental illness is often a factor in serial killer cases. Dahmer suffered from various psychological issues, including borderline personality disorder and schizotypal personality disorder. These conditions may have contributed to his distorted thinking and behavior. Society also bears some responsibility for the crimes of Jeffrey Dahmer. There were missed opportunities to intervene, systemic failures that allowed him to continue his reign of terror. The police, in particular, were criticized for their handling of the case. The media also has a responsibility to protect the privacy of the victims and their families. Sensationalizing their stories can cause further pain and suffering. A more balanced and responsible approach is needed. The memory of Dahmer's victims should serve as a constant reminder of the importance of these efforts. Their lives were cut short, but their stories can inspire us to create a better world. Let us never forget them. The story of Jeffrey Dahmer is a chilling reminder of the darkness that can reside within the human heart. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature and the factors that can lead to unspeakable acts of violence. Let us remember the victims of Jeffrey Dahmer and honor their memory by striving to create a world where such horrors never happen again. The fight against darkness begins with understanding and empathy. If you found this video insightful, please like and share it to spread awareness about the complexities of criminal psychology. Subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analysis of true crime cases. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts on the case and what you believe are the most important lessons we can learn from it. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health issues, please seek help. Resources are available, and you are not alone.